You don't belong here. First class isn't for people like you." The words landed like a slap, slicing through the quiet hum of the cabin. No whisper, no hesitation, just sharp, deliberate contempt. A few heads turned. A champagne flute rattled on its tray as the turbulence of silence spread. The man in seat 2A, plain black t-shirt, jeans, no designer tags, sat still. His boarding pass lay in his hand, the ink bold under the cabin's white light. The insult wasn't new, but here, in the hushed luxury of a first-class cabin, it carried the weight of a verdict. He didn't flinch, didn't argue, only his eyes moved, calm, steady, unfazed. The white passenger standing in the aisle leaned closer. His voice grew louder, sharp enough for the other 12 in first class to hear. "Security should have stopped you at the gate. They must have made a mistake. People like you, jeans, sneakers, this isn't your place." A flight attendant nearby froze mid-step. The smell of fresh citrus from the just-peeled garnish on her tray seemed to hang too sharply in the air. Overhead, the neon seatbelt fastened sign flickered faintly, buzzing like a wasp in the tense silence. The man in the t-shirt set his boarding pass down slowly. His hands were steady. His words, few. "This is my seat." The passenger scoffed, the sound wet and cruel. Not for long. The silence stretched. No one moved. In row 3, a woman adjusted her scarf nervously. In row 1, a businessman set down his glass too firmly, crystal meeting wood with a muted crack. The black man's jaw tightened but never clenched. His posture, straight, grounded, didn't waver. The insult wasn't answered with noise. It was answered with presence. A pause. Then 3 clipped words, calm but heavy. "I'm staying here." The passenger's chair screeched as he dragged it forward, planting himself like a judge preparing for trial. A storm was forming in the silence, and none of them, flight attendant, passenger, crew, knew what was about to break. Somewhere, deep in the cabin, a baby cried, once then fell silent again, as though even innocence felt the weight of what had been unleashed. The man in jeans looked out the oval window. Clouds shifted below the wing, reflection of his calm face in the glass. His silence was louder than rage, but silence wouldn't last, because in less than an hour this cabin would become a courtroom, and justice, swift, shocking, undeniable, would be served. For now, all that remained was the faint buzz of the cabin lights, a champagne glass trembling in its holder, and the scrape of the passenger's chair hanging in the air like unfinished business. Before we dive deeper, before the curtain fully lifts, there's something no one in this cabin knows. The man they just tried to erase doesn't just belong here. He owns the sky they're flying through. Before we get into this, pause a moment. If you've ever seen someone put in their place for no reason other than how they looked, you know the weight of silence. You know that sting when people pretend not to notice. That's where this story begins. But trust me, it doesn't end there. So I want to ask you, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. If this story moves you even a little, hit that like button, subscribe, share it. Because what's about to unfold in this cabin, 12 rows, leather seats, whispered judgments, isn't just another flight. It's a stage, and every gesture, every word, every silence becomes part of the play. A passenger thought he could shame a stranger out of first class. A crew thought they could quietly back him up. What they didn't know was that the man they were humiliating had power they couldn't measure, not in frequent flyer miles, not in platinum cards. Stay with me. You'll see arrogance turn into fear. You'll see whispers turn into witnesses. You'll see justice land harder than any plane ever could. It all began here. First-class cabin, mid-flight, Wednesday afternoon, 35,000 feet above the Rockies. The hum of the engines steady. The smell of warm bread rolls drifting down the aisle. And one sentence that will change everything. "Sir, show me your ID." First-class mid-flight is an odd kind of cathedral. The light is dim, cool, and exact. Overhead, LEDs casting soft pools that make leather seats look deeper than they are. The aisle carpet is dark, almost blue-black, and it swallows footsteps, so the only true sound is the engine's endless velvet, a low vibration that hums through the ribs and the window frame. The aircraft moves like a large animal breathing in its sleep. Warm bread lives somewhere in the cabin air, salted butter, citrus oil when a garnish is pinched open. The scent of coffee climbs the aisle in invisible spirals. Wherever it passes, hands lift instinctively, expectant. Ice lands in crystal with a delicate clatter. A spoon kisses porcelain. These are the small bells of luxury. The choreography is practiced. Doors click, carts glide, napkins open with a little bloom noise. Seat 2A sits against the window, a small, perfect world. There's a reading light angled like a stage spot, a stitched headrest that remembers every temple, a tray table that opens with that particular aircraft hush, soft resist, metallic sigh, lock. Beyond the oval window, the Rockies, all bone and white, slipping beneath the wing like a grand lie you can't prove from up here. Blue goes on forever in every direction, so generous it borders on cruel. Not everyone breathes the same in this air. Some inhale like they own it. Some hold their breath, counting the moments between small performances. The nod that means, I belong. The smile that means, I don't cause trouble. The cabin holds both kinds, and in the quiet space between them, a knife waits. Sir, show me your ID, repeats, gentle in phrasing, sharp in intent. A sentence polished by years of use. The cabin hears it. The cabin remembers. He wears a black t-shirt that fits like a secret, jeans without logos, and sneakers with clean edges and a soft sole that doesn't announce him when he stands. He calls no attention except the kind that follows him anyway. Wrist bare. No watch to signal time's price. His carry-on, compact, matte, unbranded, with a zipper that closes like a whisper. He doesn't introduce himself. He occupies. That's the first difference. He sits at 2A like the seat is an agreement he signed in ink that morning, and the contract is not negotiable. His posture is the outline of a decision. Hands quiet on the armrest. He answers slowly, like every word has to pass through a filter marked, "Does this raise the temperature?" He keeps them cool. Always cool. There are markers if you know where to look. The phone is slim and clean of notifications because it lives in Do Not Disturb, like a disciplined monk. The boarding pass, no creases. The eyes, trained to read rooms at altitude and in boardrooms. The jaw, relaxed, but certain. He wears stillness the way others wear power. He looks outside when the insult lands, not as retreat, but as calibration. White summits drift by in the distance. Their cold steadies him. He blinks once. The insult keeps hanging there, bright as a warning light. He doesn't touch it. He lets it burn out. "Sir, ID?" the attendant repeats, softer this time, but softer can cut deeper. He nods, not at the demand, but at the moment. He knows this room. The script is well rehearsed. The antagonist is replaceable. The lesson never is. He takes his wallet from the seat pocket like he's handling glass. The plastic edges of his license graze his fingertips. He feels the little bumps in the laminate, the human proof that a person's name must be manufactured into an object to be believed. He offers it with 2 fingers, not submissive, not theatrical, precise. The card stops a breath away from the attendant's palm. He waits, for dignity to be part of the exchange. He says just 3 words, "This seat's mine." His voice is low. It hums under the aircraft hum. People hear it without turning their heads. The calm in it is the kind that makes decisions and other people wake up and look at themselves. From row 3, the scarfed woman watches. From row 1, a silver-haired man pretends to read while his thumb doesn't move the screen. Somewhere down the aisle, a teenager tilts his phone, camera not open but available. The air grows points. The man at 2A holds steady. He breathes like he owns the rhythm. The white passenger who started it, seat 2C, aisle, wears wealth like a uniform. Crisp linen, a watch fat with complications, shoes polished to the kind of shine that wants to be seen from a row away. He leans out into the aisle with a body trained to take space, a proprietary angle that says the aisle is an extension of his will. His hair is aggressively tidy. His smile, when it appears, is the reflex of a man who's never had to apologize to anyone who could hurt him. His signature insult is simple, efficient, evergreen. Not here. He says it a dozen ways without changing the words. Not here, when 2A sits calmly with a valid pass. Not here, when the attendant hesitates. Not here, when the cabin breathes in. He doesn't argue facts. He argues belonging. The lead flight attendant, Catherine on the name tag, posture like a ruler, moves with the strained grace of someone who balances hospitality and hierarchy for a living. Her voice has 2 settings, warm and warning. When she says, "May I see your ID?" It wears both jackets at once. Her policy is polished like cutlery. It reflects her face perfectly and distorts everyone else's. Behind her, a younger attendant hovers, tray trembling only a little, eyes darting between passenger and procedure. He is the kind who memorizes manuals because the world is easier when there are bullet points to hide inside. His silence is the silence of survival. A purser appears briefly, hand on the galley frame, reading the weather not outside, but in the cabin. He reads the room wrong at first, the easiest error. He catches the eye of the man in 2C. Some customers are weather fronts. He nods, a tiny tilt that seems harmless and says everything. "I'll back you." It's not malice, it's momentum, the kind that knocks people down without ever admitting it was pushing. "Sir, you understand we have to confirm." Catherine's diction is precise. Each syllable sits upright. The words aren't cruel, they're colder than that. The cruelty is in the targeting, and the targeting is dressed as tidiness. The man in 2C sighs through his nose like he's tired of pretending this is complicated. "If this were a real ticket," he says to no one and everyone, "we wouldn't still be talking." He smiles. He's performed this line before. It gets laughs in some rooms. Here, it gets a rustle, a sympathetic cough, a single glass placed down too hard. He counts that as agreement. A mother across the aisle pulls her child's headphones up a notch. She doesn't want a lesson here today. A college kid on 3D stares hard, then stares away. A businessman in 1A adjusts his tie even though he isn't wearing one. People become furniture when they're scared of the scene. They try to be flush to the wall. The cabin crew forms a shape in the aisle, 3 bodies making a gate. The word policy floats above them like a banner no one drew but everyone can see. It's polite. It cleans the blade. "Your ID, sir." The antagonist inhales. He's won this hallway a dozen times in a dozen lobbies, counters, check-ins. He thrives on the math. 1 of me, 3 of them, 1 of him. He thinks the answer is obvious. He doesn't know there's a variable he hasn't accounted for, the kind that resets the whole equation. At the very edge of first class, near the curtain that separates premium from the many, a soft voice says, almost to herself, "He showed it." The scarfed woman in 3B, she had seen the boarding pass earlier, didn't mean to, but the angle gave it away. She carries a schoolteacher's fairness in the bones. Her throat tightens now because she knows how quickly fairness gets talked over on planes. Always for safety, always for now, always we'll sort it out later. A few rows ahead, an older man, 1A, silver hair, quiet watch, watches the attendant's hands more than her face. He notices the tiniest things. How the ID is held like a suspicious object, how the corner of the boarding pass isn't smoothed down but pinched, how the smile is overpracticed around the eyes. He thinks about his father, a porter, the way respect was currency he could never quite afford. The old man considers standing. He doesn't. Yet. A soft click from the galley, metal on metal, a drawer closing. The younger attendant flinches at the sound like it's a gavel. He steps back a fraction, just enough for the aisle to see 2A fully, his calm like a lit candle that refuses to gutter. Somewhere behind the curtain, a phone lifts halfway. Not recording. Ready. The teenager chews the inside of his cheek, eyes refusing to film what he isn't brave enough to stop. The intercom crackles faintly as the cockpit finishes a weather exchange. Static, then silence. The sky ahead is clear. The air inside is not. The man in 2C catches the purser's eye again. He raises both brows, the universal sign for, "Are we really doing this?" He expects a nod. He gets a pause. Doubt, even small, is a crack that air looks for. And then, the sound that will become a dividing line. A tiny, human sound. The light scrape of the CEO's chair as he sits forward a single inch. It's not aggression. It's attention. It asks the room to behave like it's full of grown people. "Sir," Catherine says one last time, the script landing exactly where it wants to land. "Show me your ID." The CEO's fingers ease the license forward. The plastic edges kiss the polished wood of the armrest as it goes. A gentle click. He doesn't let go. There's a heartbeat where only the engine speaks. In that heartbeat is a life of other rooms, other counters, other just-to-confirms. In that heartbeat is a threshold. He releases the card. The ID slides into the attendant's hand. A breath catches. Somewhere, a spoon touches china and stays there. Triggering act achieved. The ID card slides across the wood of the armrest. The hum of the engines holds steady, but the mood shifts. Catherine, the lead attendant, holds the plastic card between 2 fingers like it's contaminated. She doesn't look at it right away. Instead, she glances at 2C, the passenger who had lit this fire, and raises a brow as if awaiting approval. He gives the smallest nod, a smirk bending his lip. Her voice is even, too even. I'll need to verify this with my crew system. The man in 2A, black t-shirt, calm eyes, gives a slight shrug. Verify it? But Catherine doesn't move toward the galley or her tablet. She just keeps holding the ID in her hand, as if possession itself changes the truth. The plastic sweats under her thumb. The delay is deliberate, and the passengers feel it. A few coughs in the silence, one too loud like a gavel striking wood. Behind her, Brian, the younger attendant, chimes in, half whisper, half chuckle. These forgeries get slicker every year. His voice carries more than he means it to. The scarfed woman in 3B hears it. So does the silver-haired man in 1A. So does the kid with the half-raised phone. Words are louder in cabins, even when they try to wear coats of quiet. The CEO doesn't flinch. His reply is soft, without bite. It's valid. Brian smirks. We'll see. Catherine lowers the ID but doesn't scan it. She tucks it against her clipboard as though it now belongs to her. The small theft isn't procedural. It's symbolic. The man in 2C leans back, satisfied. Policy's policy, he mutters. The phrase spreads like smoke. Policy. The word that dresses cruelty in a uniform. The man in 2A turns his head toward the window again. Clouds drift like mountains on their sides. His reflection stares back, steady. He blinks once. His silence doesn't surrender. It accuses. But silence won't hold forever. The ID still in Catherine's grip, unscanned. The cabin watches. The air is thin with judgment. Sir, Catherine says louder now, projecting her voice toward row 3, maybe even 4. This seat requires confirmation. We've had incidents. Her tone is dressed in concern, but it's sharp underneath. The man in 2A doesn't reply. His calm is its own barricade. The white passenger in 2C leans into the aisle. Told you, first class isn't for everyone. It's not said quietly this time. It's said for effect. His words sail down the cabin like a paper airplane made of glass. Fragile, dangerous, impossible to ignore. Passengers shift in their seats. One woman lowers her magazine. A man, halfway through his drink, sets it down without sipping. Even the baby near row 5 lets out a short cry before the cabin hushes it again. Ryan, the younger attendant, chuckles. We're just trying to avoid embarrassment. He doesn't mean himself. He means the man in 2A. The insult is clever because it's dressed as protection. Avoid embarrassment, as if they're saving him from shame, when in truth, they're manufacturing it. The CEO finally speaks, his words like stones dropped into still water. You're doing fine without me. The line hangs. A few passengers glance at each other, unsure if they're allowed to laugh, unsure if it's safe. Catherine's smile tightens. Sir, this is serious. We've had counterfeit tickets, fraudulent IDs. I can't allow a disruption in first class. Disruption? His voice is soft, controlled. I've been silent since I sat down. And it's true. He hasn't raised his voice once, but the silence is louder than their accusations. It points back at them. The man in 2C scoffs theatrically. You see? He's playing the victim. That's what they do. The phrase lands like a slap. A few passengers recoil in second-hand discomfort. One man clears his throat hard, as though trying to drown out the echo. The CEO doesn't move, doesn't flinch. He looks down at his hands resting on the armrest. His fingers drum once, slow, steady, like a heartbeat reminding itself not to accelerate. Catherine adjusts her posture, squaring herself to the cabin rather than to him. She wants the room on her side now. Ladies and gentlemen, she says, please bear with us while we resolve a seating issue. The words seating issue land sterile, official, safe, but everyone knows it's more than that. The scarfed woman in 3B whispers audibly enough, It's not the seat. A ripple passes through the rows. The humiliation isn't private anymore. It's public, deliberate. They've put him on trial in front of the cabin, his dignity the evidence, their suspicion the prosecutor. And all he's done is sit. The CEO leans back slightly, tilts his head toward Catherine, and says quietly, almost gently, You've already judged me, just admit it. The sentence isn't loud, but in the thick quiet that follows it feels shouted. Even the engines seem quieter. The hum of the jet engines continues, steady as a metronome. But inside the cabin, the rhythm fractures into smaller beats. Whispers, gestures, fragments of suspicion. Catherine doesn't scan the ID. She places it on her clipboard, just out of his reach, as though it's evidence in a trial that only she can preside over. Policy requires secondary checks, she says. The phrase is clinical, polished, and false. Brian steps closer, holding the boarding pass between two fingers like it's counterfeit currency. Strange, he mutters, flipping it over. Doesn't even look real. Could be a printout. He doesn't say it to Catherine. He says it to the passengers within earshot. 2C leans back smugly. Told you. The CEO doesn't react. He simply turns his palm upward, empty, as if to say, and yet, here I am. Catherine sets the card on her service tray but doesn't return it. Her hand lingers over it like a dealer holding on to the ace. The passengers watch. The symbolism is clear. His identity isn't his to control anymore. The scarfed woman in 3B shifts in her seat. Her voice is quiet but not invisible. He showed you the ticket. Twice. Catherine ignores her. From the galley, another attendant emerges, a tall man in a dark vest. He doesn't ask questions. He just scans the ID on the clipboard and shakes his head slowly, theatrically. Can't confirm. The words mean nothing. His scanner hasn't even beeped. But the gesture is the point. The performance is the policy. Passengers murmur. The old man in 1A leans forward, his hands gripping the edge of his seat. He says nothing yet, but his eyes are sharp. Brian, louder now. Sir, we'll need you to step aside while we sort this out. The CEO's head tilts slightly. He doesn't rise. His words are soft, precise. No, this is my seat. The denial hangs like frost in the air. Catherine frowns, tight-lipped. Then you leave us no choice. And then come the micro-events. A young attendant carries a tray past him and pauses just a fraction too long, looking him over before moving on. Someone in row 4 coughs deliberately, as if clearing the discomfort from their throat but adding to the chorus of disapproval. A passenger's champagne flute tips just slightly, the spill catching a glint of light as it drops onto the napkin, the small accident amplified by tension. The kid with the half-raised phone adjusts again, thumb hovering over the record button, his hesitation as loud as defiance would be. Every gesture compounds. Every glance is another verdict. The trial is in session, and the jury is made of 12 strangers who don't want to admit they're witnesses. Brian folds the boarding pass once, deliberately, like he's crumpling dignity into a smaller shape. He doesn't tear it. Not yet. The hint is enough. The CEO's jaw shifts once. Calm, still, but the muscle beneath tightens like a wire pulled taut. Sir, Catherine says, louder again, turning back to the rows, we are resolving a documentation issue. The phrase is plastic, but it gives the passengers something safe to repeat later. Documentation issue. The scarfed woman exhales sharply, shaking her head. It's not the paper, it's the man. A few passengers hear her. Their silence confirms she's right. The CEO looks out the oval window again. The Rockies gleam in the distance, white ridges cutting through clouds. His reflection stares back, calm, patient, waiting. His stillness is a protest. His silence is a verdict. And the micro-events, piling up like beads on a string, lead inevitably to the next stage. Escalation not just in tone, but in force. Because Catherine has already made the call. The folded boarding pass rests on Brian's palm. The ID still lies on Catherine's clipboard, hostage. The hum of the engines presses like background thunder. Then, a click. Catherine taps her earpiece. Captain, we'll need ground security at the gate. Possible fraudulent boarding, she says evenly. The words are clipped, professional, but the intent behind them is sharp. The sentence slices through the cabin. Passengers stir. A woman halfway down the aisle grips her handbag tighter. A man leans forward, whispering, "Security?" As if the word alone justifies the suspicion. The CEO does not move. His posture is carved from stillness. Only his eyes shift, settling on Catherine with the faintest trace of disbelief. Not anger, not fear, just the silent recognition that the performance has reached its next act. 2C smirks wide. Finally, he mutters, should have done that 10 minutes ago. The younger attendant, Brian, straightens, puffed up with borrowed authority. Sir, for your own safety, please stand and follow me. For my safety, the CEO repeats quietly, almost like he's testing the phrase. His voice is low, controlled. I'm safer, right here. Brian falters for half a beat but regains his mask. If you don't comply, you'll be escorted. The word escorted is heavy, deliberate. It doesn't mean guided, it means dragged. Everyone in the cabin knows it. The silver-haired man in 1A clears his throat, finally speaking. He showed his ID. His voice is low but steady. I saw it. Catherine turns her head, smiling that polite, weaponized smile. Sir, please remain seated. We'll handle this. We, the scarfed woman in 3B blurts. Her tone is sharper now. Or you. A ripple passes through the cabin. A teenager in row 4 lowers his hoodie, eyes wide, phone angled now, not hidden. Catherine ignores them all. She presses the intercom. Her voice cuts through the speakers like a clean knife. Security to gate. Passenger non-compliance, first-class section. The air changes. There is no mistaking it now. He has been declared a threat. The CEO exhales slowly, the sound almost inaudible but felt by those nearest. His words drop, deliberate, unshaken. I paid for this seat. I'm not leaving it. The clarity of it strikes like glass breaking in a quiet room. 2C laughs under his breath, but it's brittle now, trying too hard. You'll learn. The boarding pass is folded again, creased deeper. Brian slips it into his pocket like contraband. Catherine places the ID flat on the tray as if preparing evidence for pickup. The passengers know what comes next. A removal, an image, a headline. Some avert their eyes, desperate not to be witnesses. Others lean in, unable to look away. The CEO remains still, his calm becoming unbearable to those who thrive on chaos. His silence accuses them louder than words ever could. And then, a faint rumble at the front of the cabin. Heavy footsteps on the jet bridge, the kind that mean uniforms, the kind that mean force. The trial is about to become an execution. The footsteps grow closer, a dull drumbeat on the jet bridge. The intercom still hums from Catherine's last call. Every passenger feels the shift. This is no longer procedure. This is punishment. The scarfed woman in 3B rises halfway from her seat. He showed you the ticket, she says firmly this time, no whisper. You never even looked. Heads turn. Passengers murmur. A few phones lift higher, no longer half hidden but openly recording. The quiet courtroom has transformed into a gallery of witnesses. The old man in 1A speaks louder now, his voice carrying weight. You can't take his seat because you think he doesn't belong. That's not policy. That's prejudice. Catherine's smile cracks, but she doesn't reply. Brian shifts uncomfortably, realizing the crowd has become part of the scene. A teenager in row 4 mutters, I got it all, tilting his phone screen toward his mother. She doesn't stop him this time. She nods, jaw tight. Another passenger, the woman who had lowered her magazine, calls out, Why is security even here? He hasn't moved. He hasn't raised his voice once. The ripple grows louder. Murmurs turn to low protests. The aisle becomes a stage where the balance of silence and truth is shifting. And still, the CEO sits, calm, centered. His hands rest steady on the armrests. He doesn't join the chorus. He doesn't need to. His stillness makes their voices stronger. Catherine snaps, Passengers, please remain seated. But she's cut off. No, the scarfed woman says, standing fully now, her voice sharp enough to slice through the hum. We're not sitting down while you drag someone out for existing. Applause doesn't come. Not yet. But something heavier arrives. Solidarity. Eyes meet across rows. Phones stay raised. The quiet consensus becomes visible. Not this time. The CEO finally speaks. Just 3 words, quiet but clear. Everyone sees you. The timing is surgical. The footsteps stop just outside the cabin door. The trial is about to collapse under its own weight. He is 12 again, south side of Chicago. A corner store with buzzing fluorescent lights and the faint metallic smell of coins rubbed too many times between palms. The boy, skinny, too tall for his age, stands at the counter with a pack of gum and a crumpled dollar. Behind him, his mother waits, hands full of groceries. The cashier, a man with gray hair and a permanent frown, stares at the bill. He doesn't scan it, doesn't move. He just shakes his head. This isn't real, the cashier says flatly. The boy blinks. It is. The man leans over the counter, lowering his voice, but not enough. Kids like you come in here all the time with fakes. I should call the cops. The mother steps forward quickly, her voice calm but tight. That's my money. I earned it. Give the boy his gum. But the cashier smirks. Not today. He crumples the bill, tosses it in the drawer, and slams it shut. The sound echoes, wood on wood, a verdict. The boy feels heat rising in his chest, his face. He wants to shout, wants to grab the drawer and pull it open. But his mother touches his shoulder lightly. Stand tall, she whispers. Don't beg for what you already earned. One day they'll see. Until then, you see yourself. The boy swallows his rage. He straightens. He says nothing. That silence becomes a seed. It takes root. Years later, a lobby, glass walls, the smell of cologne and paper freshly unwrapped from printers. He is 24, in his first real suit, clutching a folder of resumes and recommendations. He has done everything right: school, internships, extra hours that carved dark circles under his eyes. The recruiter looks him over, expression practiced, smiles politely. "We're looking for a different image for our leadership program." "Image?" he asks. The recruiter doesn't answer directly, just gestures toward the glass offices where young men in navy suits laugh with easy familiarity. "You understand. It's about fit." He does understand. Too well. He leaves the folder on the desk anyway, walks out through the glass doors into the hot afternoon air. His tie feels like a rope. That night he takes out a notebook, writes 3 words across the top of a blank page: "Never again silenced." He circles it once, underlines it twice. 10 years later, boardroom, the kind with heavy doors that close too softly, trapping power inside. He is 34 now, dressed simply but with gravity earned through relentless work. The company he built is still young, but it's growing fast. A potential partner leans across the table, chuckling as if he's sharing a joke. "You've done well, but investors like reassurance. Maybe if one of us appeared at the front during negotiations, you'd have an easier time." The implication is clear. Let a white face lead the room. He doesn't smile, doesn't argue, just opens his folder and lays down numbers, growth charts, revenue, contracts signed, evidence louder than prejudice. The room quiets. Then he speaks. Calm, even. "The numbers don't care what I look like, and neither should you." That moment changes everything. Clients start listening. Deals close. The company climbs. He learns the power of restraint, of letting silence corner the guilty, of letting calm expose chaos. The flashback collapses. The sound of the slamming drawer fades. The murmur of the recruiter's "fit" dissolves. The chuckle of the partner dies out. And suddenly, he is back. In the cabin. The footsteps of security pounding closer. The CEO exhales once, long, steady. His mother's words still in his bones. "Stand tall. Don't beg for what you already earned." The officer's presence changes the air instantly. The murmurs hush. Even the engines seem quieter, as though listening. Catherine straightens, relief painted across her face. This passenger is non-compliant. Possible fraudulent boarding. He refuses to move. The CEO doesn't move. His hands rest on the armrests. His voice is steady, precise. "I showed my pass. I showed my ID. They kept them." The officer glances at Catherine, then at the clipboard where the ID rests, untouched. He hesitates, but before he can ask, 2C leans forward, pointing. "He doesn't belong here. Look at him. Jeans, sneakers. First class isn't for that." The insult slices sharper than all before because now it's said in front of the uniform, dressed as fact, not opinion. Passengers inhale sharply. A few phones tilt higher. The scarfed woman mutters, "Unbelievable." The old man in 1A shakes his head. The officer shifts uneasily but doesn't act yet. He waits, looking between faces, feeling the room. Brian folds his arms, sneering. "Sir, just move before this gets worse." The CEO's eyes lift slowly to him. His words are like iron wrapped in velvet. It already has. The tension tightens like a wire ready to snap. Passengers sit taller, no one daring to cough or shift. Phones glow in shaky hands. The cabin is silent except for the soft mechanical whine of pressurized air moving through vents. Catherine clears her throat, performing authority. "Officer, please escort the gentleman out. We have VIP guests waiting for the seat." The officer hesitates again. "He showed ID?" "He showed something," Brian interjects quickly. "Looked fake to me." 2C laughs. "Probably printed it at home. Classic." The CEO exhales slowly. His gaze sweeps the cabin once, row by row. He sees every witness, every screen raised, every nervous glance. His voice, when it comes, is low, steady, measured like a metronome. "You all see what this is?" The scarfed woman stands. "Yes, we do." Her courage unlocks others. The old man in 1A speaks louder now. "He belongs here. He showed everything." Another passenger further back. "Stop lying, we're watching." The officer lifts a hand, unsure, trying to calm both sides, but the tide has already shifted. Silence doesn't protect the crew anymore. Phones keep rising. Whispers turn into commentary. The cabin isn't neutral now. It's leaning, waiting. The CEO straightens just slightly, his calm pressing heavier than any threat. The next words come slow, deliberate. "You've made your judgment. Now it's my turn." He stands, not rushed, not angry. A deliberate rise as though the air itself grants permission. The folded boarding pass slips from Brian's pocket, falling to the carpet with a soft flutter. Passengers notice. Phones catch it. The symbol of their theft exposed. The CEO doesn't bend to pick it up. He doesn't need to. His presence alone commands more than the pass ever could. He reaches calmly into his bag. Not hurried, not defensive. Composed. From it, he removes a slim leather folder, opens it, and slides a card free. It gleams under the cabin light. Company credentials, embossed name, title, Chief Executive Officer. Gasps ripple. Someone mutters, "Oh my God." Another whispers, "That's him." He places the card gently on the service tray beside his license. His voice doesn't rise, but the quiet weight of it is louder than shouting. "My name is Marcus Carter. I am the CEO of this airline, and you've just proven everything I needed to know." The cabin freezes. The officer stares, caught between duty and revelation. Catherine's mouth opens, but no words emerge. Brian stutters. 2C pales, his smirk gone like a mask ripped off. Phones capture every flicker of shock. The CEO continues, precise and calm. "This seat is mine. This airline is mine. And the only fraud here is the way you judged me before you knew my name." The silence is complete, electric. Then a single clap. From the scarfed woman. Another follows, then more. Until the cabin pulses with quiet applause, restrained but undeniable. The applause fades into silence again, but the balance has shifted entirely. The officer steps back, no longer in control. The passengers are the witnesses now. The cabin itself has become a courtroom, and the verdict is written in every pair of eyes. The CEO speaks evenly to the crew, not the passengers. "You're relieved of duty, effective immediately." Catherine stammers, You can't." Brian shakes his head furiously. "We didn't know." "That's the problem," the CEO cuts in, his voice slicing clean. "Respect shouldn't depend on who you think someone is." He turns to the passengers. "You saw, you heard. Bias doesn't whisper here, it shouted, and it ends now." The old man in 1A nods firmly. "We'll testify." The scarfed woman lifts her phone higher. "We already are." 2C slumps back into his seat, suddenly very small. No smirk left. Only silence. The CEO leans forward slightly, delivering the principle like a closing statement. "From this moment, this cabin doesn't fly with prejudice in its crew." The words hang, final, immovable. The cabin has shifted. Justice has entered. The climax has landed. Catherine swallows hard, her clipboard trembling slightly in her hand. "Mr. Carter, sir, I didn't know." Marcus cuts in, voice measured. "You didn't need to know. That's the point." Brian exhales sharply, color drained from his face. We were following protocol." Marcus tilts his head. "Protocol didn't tell you to fold my boarding pass like it was fake money. Protocol didn't tell you to call me a fraud. That was you." Brian looks away, shame settling in. He turns his gaze to Catherine. "You asked for ID 3 times, then ignored it every time I showed it. You escalated because of my clothes, not my documentation. You've embarrassed yourself, and this company." Catherine opens her mouth, but nothing comes. Finally, he addresses the officer. "Escort them off this aircraft. They're relieved of duty permanently." Gasps ripple through the cabin. Catherine's clipboard slips from her hand, landing on the carpet with a soft smack. Brian mutters, "This can't be happening." But the officer steps forward, motioning them toward the galley. The passengers don't cheer, they don't need to. Their silence is verdict enough. As Catherine and Brian shuffle away, the scarfed woman whispers audibly, "About time." Marcus remains standing in the aisle, phone now in his hand. A familiar voice comes through the AirPods in his ear. His assistant, Rachel. Board's been watching the live feeds. Terminations approved. Replacement crew already en route. Marcus nods. "Good, send them to the gate." Rachel adds, "Passengers are trending this already. Hashtags climbing." He doesn't reply. He doesn't care about trending. Instead, he looks to the cabin, to the passengers who had raised their phones, their voices. "Thank you," he says simply. His voice carries across the 12 rows. "You didn't sit silent. That matters." The old man in 1A raises his glass slightly, nodding with respect. The scarfed woman smiles faintly, eyes bright with vindication. The teenager in row 4 speaks up, his phone still recording. "You stayed calm the whole time. I've never seen anything like it." Marcus's response is quiet but firm. Sometimes calm is the loudest voice. The passengers murmur agreement. A small ripple of applause starts again. Not thunderous, but steady, honest. Then Marcus turns to the young attendant, the one who had hesitated, the one with trembling hands. "What's your name?" "Mamiya," she stammers. "You spoke up when it counted. That's integrity. You'll stay. You'll be promoted." Her eyes widen, shocked. Passengers clap warmly. The scarfed woman calls out, "Good for her." Mia presses her lips together, fighting back tears. "Thank you, sir." The cabin breathes differently now. Lighter, not free of tension, but released from its worst grip. Marcus returns to his seat. 2A, the seat that was his from the beginning. He lowers himself calmly, reclaiming it without flourish, without performance. Just certainty. The passengers watch. Phones slowly lower. Conversations buzz in low voices, all carrying the same word. Respect. The officer lingers nearby, but no longer as an adversary. More like a guard ensuring the remaining crew doesn't forget their place. The scarfed woman leans slightly into the aisle, her voice soft but audible. "You taught them something today." Marcus meets her eyes. "Not just them." She nods, understanding. The old man in 1A raises his glass again. To dignity. Marcus doesn't toast back. Instead, he says one line, clear enough for all to hear. Respect isn't earned by uniforms or tickets. It's owed to every soul who walks aboard. The line lands. A truth dressed in calm. It seals the moment. The cabin exhales as one. Outside, the engines roar steady. Inside, the trial is over. Justice has been served, not by shouting, not by violence, but by calm that refused to move. The cabin is quieter now. Marcus sits in 2A, finally unchallenged. But the air still carries the weight of what just happened. Passengers replay the moments in their minds, phones still warm from recording. The story has shifted from incident to lesson. Dignity doesn't wear clothes. It doesn't fit into a seat assignment. It doesn't shrink because someone else says, "Not here." Respect is not a luxury to be earned. It is a baseline owed to every human being. Too often, the world dresses discrimination in the costume of policy. Too often, humiliation is disguised as procedure. But when the layers are peeled away, what remains is simple. Judgment without cause, cruelty without reason. And yet, justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it sits still, it waits, it lets arrogance trip over its own words until the truth is undeniable. Marcus Carter proved that calm is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Stillness, when chosen, is power. The passengers learned something that day at 35,000 feet. That justice is not abstract. It's not confined to courts or boardrooms. It happens in small spaces, cabins, lobbies, counters, where a single word can strip dignity or restore it. And when witnesses decide not to stay silent, when they raise phones, raise voices, or simply say, "That's wrong," then justice has company. The moral is clear. Respect should never depend on appearance. Policy is not an excuse for prejudice. The calmest voice in the room can be the strongest. So let this story echo beyond the cabin. Into offices, into hotels, into banks, into every space where someone thinks they can measure worth by the cut of a suit or the color of skin. Because if you strip away the uniforms, the titles, the pretense, what's left is simple. We're all passengers. We all bought our ticket to dignity the day we were born. The clouds outside drift slow and silver, the cabin calm again. Marcus sits in 2A, where he belonged from the start. The trial is over, but the story isn't finished, not until it leaves the cabin and enters the audience's hands. If you were there, what would you have done? Would you have stayed silent, eyes fixed on a magazine, pretending not to hear? Would you have whispered to the person beside you, "This feels wrong," but done nothing? Or would you have stood, phone in hand, voice steady, saying, "That's enough"? Everyday injustice doesn't always wear a headline. Sometimes it looks like a folded boarding pass. Sometimes it sounds like, "Not here." Sometimes it feels like silence too heavy to break. But you can break it. You can choose. Drop your answer in the comments. If you had been in that cabin, what would you have said? Hit that like button if you believe respect isn't optional. Share this story so the next person sitting in 2A doesn't have to prove they belong. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story is already waiting. Another lobby, another counter, another voice silenced until someone stands up. You'll want to hear it.